If you look at a map of the Pacific Northwest, you probably won't find the town of Oakhaven. It used to be there, a small, quiet place where people left their doors unlocked and knew each other's secrets. But Oakhaven had a secret of its own, a wound that never healed. On November 14th, 1994, 10-year-old Samuel Miller went to bed in his upstairs room. His mother tucked him in. His father locked the front door. Outside, snow fell in a soft, white blanket over the yard. The next morning, Samuel was gone. His bedroom window was locked from the inside. There were no footprints in the snow, no signs of a break-in, no struggle. It was as if the boy had simply evaporated. The town searched. The state police searched. For weeks, helicopters, dogs, volunteers, everyone looked for Samuel. Nothing. For 30 years, Oakhaven mourned. Samuel's parents grew old, their hope fading just like the missing posters on the telephone poles. The case went colder than the winter he vanished in. Until yesterday. At 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, a truck driver was passing by the edge of Blackwood Forest. Through the early fog, he saw something walking out of the trees. A child. The boy looked confused, barefoot, shivering. He was wearing faded Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pajamas, the exact kind that hadn't been sold in stores since the mid-90s. The driver stopped, wrapped the boy in a jacket, and called the police. When the sheriff's car pulled up and the boy was brought to the station, Sheriff Brody froze. He didn't just recognize the face, he recognized the ghost. It was Samuel Miller. Not a 40-year-old man, not a survivor who'd spent decades in captivity. Samuel was still 10, exactly as he had been the night he disappeared in 1994. For the rest of the world, 30 years had passed. Governments had changed, technology had evolved, the internet had taken over everything. But for Samuel, it had been one night. He had gone to sleep, and then, as far as he could understand, he had woken up in a different world. They rushed him to the hospital. They ran DNA tests. They checked dental records. Everything matched perfectly. It wasn't a hoax. It wasn't a long-lost cousin. This was Samuel. But Samuel's body told a story that shouldn't be possible. His fingernails hadn't grown. His hair was the exact same length as seen in old family photos. Even the contents of his stomach, partially digested food, matched the meal his mother said she cooked the night he vanished. To the doctors, it looked like Samuel had skipped the last 30 years entirely. Time hadn't moved him forward. It had simply ignored him. But that wasn't the only problem. Samuel wouldn't speak. He just stared at everything around him. Smartphones, flat-screen TVs, LED lights, with pure, silent horror. It was like waking up in a science fiction movie. He was mute, except for one clue. When the nurses checked his clothes, they found a note in the pocket of his pajama bottoms. The paper was old and brittle, like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. The handwriting, however, was not a child's. It was frantic, jagged, written in a rush by an adult hand. On it were two things: a set of coordinates and a single sentence written in red ink. Do not let the bell ring. The coordinates pointed deep into Blackwood Forest. Locals had a name for that area, the Dead Zone. Birds never flew over it. Compasses spun uselessly. Hunting dogs refused to go near it, howling and pulling away. Sheriff Brody knew he should call in state or federal authorities. He knew this had gone way past a simple missing child case. But he also knew something else. Back in 1994, he was the rookie who took the missing person report from Samuel's crying parents. He had promised them he would find their boy. Now, 30 years later, Samuel was sitting in his station, drinking a juice box, still 10 years old. Brody grabbed his keys. He wasn't going to lose the boy a second time. He took 2 deputies with him and headed into Blackwood Forest, following the coordinates from the note. As they walked, the forest began to feel wrong. The trees twisted in unnatural shapes, their bark turning gray and sickly. The air grew heavy, thick with a strange metallic smell, ozone and sulfur, like the moment before a lightning strike. Finally, their GPS stopped working. Compasses spun in circles, radios crackled with static. And then they saw it. At the exact coordinates, there was no cabin, no bunker, no cult hideout. There was a circle, a perfect circle of scorched earth, about 50 feet across. Nothing grew inside it, not grass, not moss, just blackened soil. In the center of that circle stood something that didn't belong in any forest on Earth. A bell tower. Not a church tower made of wood and brick. This thing was metallic, tall and smooth, humming with a low, almost inaudible vibration that made their teeth ache. It looked like a piece of future technology that someone had dropped into the middle of nowhere. Yet it was covered in moss and vines, like it had been sitting there for centuries. At the base of the tower, a door, open. Sheriff Brody told his deputies to stay outside. He switched on his flashlight and stepped in alone. Inside, the air was colder. The walls were lined with machinery, dials, cracked screens, broken levers, and panels that had been smashed in. Thick cables ran up into the darkness above. On one wall, something caught his eye. Photographs, hundreds of them pinned in messy rows. Photos of Oakhaven's main street, the town square, the schoolyard, Samuel's house. Each photo had a date scribbled beneath it. Some said 1994, some 2024, and some 2050. Brody's stomach turned. He swept the beam of his flashlight toward the corner of the room. There, slumped against the wall, was a skeleton wearing a lab coat. In its bony hand, frozen in death, it held a diary. Brody knelt, carefully pried the diary free, and opened it. The handwriting inside matched the note that had been in Samuel's pocket. The diary belonged to Dr. Arthur Vance, a physicist who, according to old case files, had mysteriously disappeared in the 1980s. Brody started to read. October 1994. The experiment is a failure. We tried to create a localized stasis field, a way to pause time for terminally ill patients until a cure could be found. But the field, it's unstable. It's not pausing time, it's looping it. Brody flipped to the next relevant entry, dated the same night Samuel vanished. November 14th, 1994. The field has expanded. It hit the Miller house. The boy, Samuel, he's trapped in the echo. He isn't gone. He is just stuck in a single second. To us, he is missing. To him, he is just blinking. Brody felt sweat run down his back. Samuel hadn't been kidnapped. He had been caught in an echo of time, a second that kept repeating around him for 30 years. To Samuel, it had been instant. To everyone else, it had been a lifetime. Brody turned to the final pages of the diary. The handwriting was messier now. The ink looked smeared, as if the writer had been shaking or crying. I managed to push him out. I broke the loop, but nature demands balance. If the boy returns to the flow of time, the accumulated energy of 30 years has to go somewhere. The bell. The bell is the dampener. If it rings, the energy releases. Brody slowly looked up. Above him, through the metal lattice and cables, he could see it. A massive bell mechanism at the top of the tower. Not like a church bell, but something stranger, with a huge pendulum-like clapper swinging slowly back and forth. Each swing was just a little wider than the last. The low humming in the tower grew louder. The metal around him vibrated. His bones buzzed from the inside. Do not let the bell ring. The message in Samuel's pocket wasn't a warning for the boy. It was a warning for the town. Brody bolted for the door, almost slipping on the metal floor. He burst outside, shouting at his deputies to get back to the cars. He grabbed his radio, his voice cracking as he screamed into it for the station to evacuate Oakhaven. Clear the town, now! Get everyone out! This is not a drill! But back at the station, it was already too late. Samuel, who hadn't spoken a word since they found him, stood up from the chair where they'd left him. He walked slowly to the window, looking out over the town of Oakhaven, its power lines, its parked cars, its glowing screens. He placed his small hand on the glass. For the first time in 30 years, his lips moved. His voice came out hoarse and unused, barely more than a whisper. It's time to wake up. The bell rang. No one heard the sound in their ears. They felt it. A shockwave rolled through Oakhaven, silent and invisible. But it didn't shatter windows. It didn't knock down buildings. It reset them. People clutched their heads as their smartphones crumbled into dust in their hands. Flat-screen TVs twisted and thickened, morphing back into bulky box televisions. Modern cars on the street rusted in a blink, their shapes warping into older sedans from the 90s. Digital billboards flickered and turned into blank, rusted metal frames. LED lights popped and were replaced by buzzing fluorescent tubes. In a single, impossible moment, the town of Oakhaven was hurled back to 1994. Not just the technology, the timeline. 30 years of history. Every advancement, every life decision, every child born was erased. The timeline had corrected itself. When state authorities finally arrived, they found only dense forest where Oakhaven was supposed to be. The roads ended abruptly in trees. The GPS showed nothing but green. Today, if you try to look up Oakhaven on a map, you won't find it. Officially, it never existed. But locals in the surrounding areas tell a different story. They say the town is still there, somewhere inside Blackwood Forest, trapped in a bubble of 1994, repeating the same winter over and over again. Every year, December 1994, snow falling, lights in the windows, a 10-year-old boy who never gets any older. And Samuel? Some say he's still walking the same path he did that night, going to bed, blinking, waiting for a Tuesday that never ends. So if you're ever driving through the Pacific Northwest late at night and you see a young boy on the side of the road, he's barefoot, he's shivering, he's wearing old Ninja Turtle pajamas that look like they came from a time long gone. Don't stop. Don't roll down your window. Don't ask if he needs help. Because time is fragile, and some cracks you don't come back from.